My name is Elara, and for as long as I can remember, I've worked at my parents' tableware store. We sell everything from fancy dinner plates to the kind of mugs you use for your morning coffee. It's a family business through and through. The day everything started to change was just like any other, until Serafina Wilson from the bakery next door stormed into our store. She had a way of busting in like she owned the place. Fact is, she bellowed not even a foot into the shop. "I need to speak with you now." Her voice could slice through concrete. I was rearranging some ceramic teapots. We just got in, but paused to watch the scene unfold. Dad wiped his hands on his apron and shot me a look that said, "Here we go again." "Sure thing. Beverly, what's stirring?" Dad always tried to stay cheerful around her, but you could tell he was bracing himself. Serafina Wilson glanced around, her eyes finally landing on me. "This is family business. Elara, mind giving us a minute?" Her tone rubbed me the wrong way, but I shrugged it off and wandered over to the other side of the store, pretending to fix an already perfect display of dinner sets. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their voices carried over the shelves. "I'll cut to the chase, Thaddeus. My bakery and your store have been neighbors for years. It's time we think bigger. What do you say to merging our businesses?" Her voice was all business, serious. Dad coughed, a little taken aback. "Merge, huh? That's a hefty suggestion, Beverly. What's got this idea in your head now?" "Not just that," she continued, lowering her voice so I had to strain to hear. "I think our kids could make this even more beneficial. If Elara and Orion were to tie the knot, it would solidify the deal." I almost dropped a teapot. Marry Orion. The Orion I knew was her son, sure, but he was 10 years older than me, and we barely exchanged 2 words despite being neighbors. I peeked around the aisle and saw Dad scratching his head, clearly in deep thought. "Orion is a good lad, and Elara's a bright girl," Dad finally said. "But marriage, they hardly know each other, Beverly. They'll get along, trust me. Plus, it makes good business sense, doesn't it?" There was a sharpness in her voice, like she was used to getting her way. Dad nodded slowly. "I'll talk it over with the missus and Elara, of course." When Serafina Wilson left, Dad called me over. "Elara, you heard all that, didn't you?" I nodded, not sure what to make of it. "She wants to merge the store and the bakery, and she wants me to marry Orion." "Yeah," Dad sighed, rubbing his temples. "What do you think? I know it's a lot to take in." Marrying for business sounded like something out of an old movie, not something I'd ever imagined for myself. "I don't know, Dad. Orion seems nice, but marry him just like that? You should meet him properly this time. See if you two click. No pressure to decide right now. We'll take this step by step." Orion and I spent the next few months getting to know each other. I found that he wasn't just well-mannered. He had a genuine side that cared about the business as much as his mother did, but in a less overbearing way. Our conversations often drifted from business to personal topics, which made the whole situation seem less like a contract and more like a potential relationship. The wedding planning, though, was a whole other beast. Serafina Wilson, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, took over everything, from the cake from her bakery to the decorations that looked like they belonged in one of her display windows. One afternoon, as we were going over the guest list, she barged into the room with a stack of invitations so thick you'd think we were summoning the whole town. "Elara, dear, I've added a few names to your guest list. People important to our business. It's crucial they're there," she announced, dropping the stack on the table with a thud that made me jump. I bit my tongue, not wanting to start a fight. Orion saw this and squeezed my hand under the table. "We'll sort it out, Robbie. It's our day, remember?" The day of the wedding was a blur. I stood at the back of the hall in my dress, feeling more like a prop in Serafina Wilson's grand business scheme than a bride. My dad came up to me, his smile a little forced. "You look beautiful, Elara. Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Let's do this." The ceremony went by in a rush, and before I knew it, Orion and I were pronounced husband and wife. The reception was loud, filled with Serafina Wilson's guests who talked more about the potential of our joint ventures than our nuptials. The merger was completed soon after the wedding. Both shops were knocked into one big space, with a section for the bakery and another for the tableware. On the first day we opened the combined store, Serafina Wilson was everywhere, directing staff like a general. "Elara, dear, make sure those plates are aligned with the pastries. Symmetry sells," she called out across the store. I adjusted the plates, trying to follow her exacting standards. Orion was in the bakery section, trying to coordinate with the bakers. "Make sure those scones are fresh. Elara, how's it going over there?" he shouted over the noise. "Trying to keep up with your mom's symmetry mantra," I shouted back, a hint of frustration in my voice. As weeks turned into months, the workload only got heavier. Between running the front of the store, helping in the bakery, and handling all the paperwork, I found myself unable to keep up with my college classes. "Elara, you're running a business now. You won't need that degree. This is your life," Serafina Wilson declared one evening. Her tone was dismissive, as if the matter was already decided. Her sharp, final words hit me harder than I expected. Living with them was supposed to save us money and make managing the business easier, she argued. Instead, it just meant longer hours for me since we were a short walk from the store. The lack of personal space and constant oversight from Serafina Wilson suffocated me, making each day harder than the last. What started as a partnership increasingly felt like a takeover. Meanwhile, something else troubled me more than I expected. My dad was around less and less. One particularly busy Tuesday morning, as I was setting up the store before opening, I couldn't help but feel the emptiness of his absence. He used to be here by now, sharing a joke or two to kick off the day. Instead, it was just me and the clinking of ceramics. That evening, after a long day of dealing with customers and Serafina Wilson's incessant directions, I visited my parents. The air in their living room felt heavier than usual, like there were words hanging in it that no one dared to speak. "Dad, why aren't you at the store much anymore?" I asked as soon as I sat down. The direct approach felt necessary. My dad looked up, a frown creasing his forehead. "Well, Elara, it's complicated. Beverly has, well, she's taken over more than we expected." My mom chimed in from across the room, her voice sharp with worry. "She's pushed your father out, Elara. That contract we signed, it wasn't just a merger. It's like we handed her the keys to the kingdom." My stomach twisted into knots. "What do you mean, Dad? You've always handled the orders and suppliers." He sighed, his hands clasped tightly together. "Not anymore. Beverly rewrote the job roles. Legally, I'm just a consultant now. Barely that. I don't have a say in the business I built." Anger flared up inside me, hot and fierce. "Why didn't you say anything? We thought we could handle it, sort it out without worrying you," my mom said, her eyes sad. "But it's clearer we can't. She's taking everything we've worked for, Elara." The next day, I confronted Serafina Wilson. It was early, just as the morning light began spilling into the store. She was arranging some pastries, her back to me as I walked in. "Serafina Wilson, we need to talk about my dad," I said, my voice firm, louder than I intended. She turned around, her expression one of mock surprise. "Oh, what about him, dear? You know what I'm talking about. You're pushing him out of his own business." "Why are you doing this?" I demanded. Serafina Wilson straightened up, wiping her hands on her apron as she faced me. "Elara, your father is getting older. He can't handle the stress of the business. It's better this way. I'm making things more efficient." "That's not your call to make," I shot back. "He built this place. You can't just sideline him because you think it's better." She scoffed, shaking her head. Business is tough, Elara. It's not about sentimental value. It's about keeping the ship afloat. I'm doing what's necessary. When the pandemic hit, it felt like someone had pulled the floor out from under us. Sales at the store plummeted. Every day, the empty aisles stared back at me, a grim reminder that things were bad and might get worse. During one of those quiet, worrying shifts, I decided we couldn't just sit around waiting for normal to return. Orion, we have to pivot to online. We can set up delivery, maybe start taking individual orders, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Orion looked skeptical but nodded. It's worth a shot. Let's talk to Mom about it. I knew convincing Serafina Wilson would be an uphill battle. She had her ways set in stone and viewed online sales as a risky venture. True to form, when we brought it up, she dismissed it outright. We're not some tech startup. We're a brick-and-mortar business. We'll wait this out, she declared, cutting off any further discussion. But I couldn't just stand by and watch everything we built crumble to dust. I started something on the down low. After hours, I used our store's resources to build an online community. I sold dishes from the store and baked cakes after the bakery closed for the day. Orders began to trickle in, then flood. Keeping this from Orion and Serafina Wilson was exhausting. I was burning the candle at both ends, managing our secret online sales and my day job at the store. Nights turned into mornings, and I found myself sneaking back home well past midnight on many occasions. One night, as I tiptoed in, trying not to wake anyone, I found Serafina Wilson waiting in the living room, her arms folded and her face a mix of anger and disappointment. "Where have you been, Elara? Look at the state of this house," she snapped, her voice low but fierce. "I've been working, Serafina Wilson. We got a rush of online orders tonight," I replied, my voice weary from too many long nights. "Online orders? What online orders?" Her voice rose, sharp and accusing. Before I could explain, Orion came down, drawn by the noise. "Mom, what's going on? Ask your wife what's going on. She's running some secret side business and neglecting her duties around here." Serafina Wilson shot back, glaring at me. Orion turned to me, confusion and frustration written all over his face. "What's she talking about?" I sighed, the fatigue of the last few weeks catching up to me. "I started an online store. It's been keeping us afloat since the pandemic started. I didn't tell you because your mom said no and I didn't think she'd go for it." Orion rubbed his temples, looking between his mom and me. "You should have told me, Elara. And you," he turned to his mom, "should have been more open to her ideas." Serafina Wilson's face hardened. "This is my house, and while you're under my roof, you'll follow my rules. Both of you." The argument spiraled from there. Orion, usually my ally, sided with his mom this time. "Elara, you need to balance your time better, help out more around here." Defeated and heartbroken that Orion didn't see how hard I was trying to save our business, I cut back on the online orders. I started spending my mornings cleaning the house instead of preparing shipments or baking. My afternoons were spent running the pastry counter, a reminder of what I had to scale back on to keep peace in the house. One dreary, rain-soaked afternoon, I was straightening up the store hall when the door creaked open. A little girl, about 8 years old, stumbled in. Her clothes were drenched, sticking to her skin, and she was crying, her face streaked with tears. I rushed over to her, setting aside the stack of plates I was arranging. "Hey there, what happened? Are you okay?" I asked, trying to sound as gentle as I could. Before she could answer, Serafina Wilson spotted us from the end of the aisle. She marched over, her lips pressed into a thin line. "What is this, Elara? We don't have time for this today. She looks like a beggar. Put her out before others see." My stomach twisted at her words. "She's just a child, Serafina Wilson. She's clearly lost and needs help." Orion came over, having overheard his mother. His face was unreadable as he glanced at the girl, and then back at me. Elara, Mom's right. We can't have kids like her running into the store. It's not good for business. Just handle it, okay? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Orion, she's scared and alone. We can't just throw her back out into the rain. Ignoring them both, I took the girl to a chair and wrapped her in a clean blanket from the back room. I made her a cup of hot chocolate, hoping to calm her down a bit. Seraphina Wilson was fuming. This is exactly the kind of distraction we don't need, Elara. You're responsible for any fallout from this. The girl managed to calm down enough to tell me her name was Lyra. She had wandered off from a nearby park and gotten lost. Just as she started to relax, the police arrived. They thanked me for looking after Lyra and told me her parents had been frantically looking for her. Turns out she wasn't far from home after all. After the police and Lyra left, Seraphina Wilson pulled me aside, her face stern and cold. Because of your little stunt, I'm fining you. You took time away from your work to deal with this situation. You'll wash dishes for the next 2 days to make up for it. Orion just nodded along with whatever his mom said, not once standing up for me. It stung more than I expected. That night, as I scrubbed pot after pot, my mind raced. I felt more like a servant than a part of the family. Orion's support had always been my rock, but now he was just another weight dragging me down. Each harsh word from Seraphina Wilson, each nod of agreement from Orion, was a reminder of how trapped I felt. It was another ordinary morning at the store when a richly dressed man walked in, looking around like he was searching for something special. I greeted him and asked if I could help him find anything. He nodded and explained he was looking for a high-end tea set. I showed him our finest collection, and he seemed impressed, selecting one of our most expensive sets. While I wrapped up his purchase, he browsed our pastry section and picked out an assortment of treats. The whole time, he had this kind demeanor, making small talk and asking about the store's history. After ringing up his purchases, he thanked me and then paused, his expression turning a bit more serious. By the way, I'm not sure if you remember, but my daughter was the little girl you helped out last week, the one who got lost in the storm. I was taken aback, not expecting this twist. Of course, I remember. She was such a brave little girl. I'm glad I could help her. He smiled warmly and handed me his business card. Well, I'm really grateful for what you did. If you ever need anything, advice or help with anything at all, just give me a call, he said. I looked at the card and noticed he was a lawyer, Daxton. That caught my attention, considering the mess with the store and the merger. Actually, there might be something. Could we maybe talk about a legal matter? It's about the business my father used to own with my mother-in-law. Of course, he replied with an encouraging nod. Why don't you come by my office next week? We can go over everything in detail. I took him up on his offer, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. At his office, I handed him the pile of documents my dad had signed years ago, the ones that merged our family store with my mother-in-law's bakery. He went through them carefully, his brow furrowing more with each page. After a long silence, Daxton looked up. There are several significant issues here. The contract has multiple violations that are quite concerning. I think we have a strong case if you want to challenge this, he offered. He agreed to help me pro bono to make things right. I was overwhelmed but grateful. Thank you. I'd like that. It's just hard, you know. It's my husband's family too. He understood my hesitation. It's not just about business, it's about your life. You deserve to have control over that. And you're not alone in this fight. I left his office feeling a mix of hope and dread. Could I really go against my husband and his mother? But then, what was the alternative? Living under Seraphina Wilson's thumb, watching the store my parents built from scratch being mismanaged. I walked into our house that evening, my mind still spinning from my meeting with the lawyer. I wasn't prepared for the scene that greeted me. The place was bustling, filled with guests laughing and talking, glasses clinking. I paused, taking it all in when my mother-in-law, slightly tipsy, spotted me. There you are, wandering the streets when you should be here serving your guests," she bellowed across the room. "It's your anniversary, Alara. Have you no sense of duty?" I froze, my anniversary completely slipping my mind amidst the chaos of recent events. "I'm sorry, I forgot," I stammered, feeling every eye in the room turn toward me. My apology did nothing to soothe her. In a fit of anger, she grabbed a nearby pizza box and hurled it at me. The box grazed my shoulder before tumbling to the ground. "Useless, absolutely useless," she shouted, her face red with fury. Before I could recover, Orion, also showing signs of having had too much to drink, stumbled over to me. "And look at you, not even ready to eat. Wash up, for heaven's sake," he slurred, spilling wine from his glass onto my hands and clothes in a mocking gesture. The wine stained my shirt, cold and unwelcome against my skin. Something inside me snapped. The humiliation, the disrespect, the sheer injustice of how they were treating me, it all boiled over. I wiped my hands on my stained shirt and faced the room. My voice steady and loud, I declared, "I've been to a lawyer. I'm getting a divorce, Orion." The room fell completely silent. Orion and his mother looked at me as if they had seen a ghost. "Who do you think you are?" my mother-in-law hissed, stepping closer. "You think you can just—" I'm not finished. I cut her off, my voice ringing clear. "I'm challenging the merger of the store. There's been fraud, and I've already sent the documents to the authorities and to court." Orion staggered slightly, his earlier bravado fading. "Alara, you can't mean this. I'm also seeking financial compensation for everything I've endured here," I continued, ignoring his disbelief. The shock was palpable. Murmurs started to rise among the guests as my declaration sank in. I didn't wait for more questions or for the situation to escalate further. I turned on my heel and headed upstairs to pack my things. My mother-in-law followed, her tone shifting to desperation. "Alara, please let's talk about this. You're overreacting." I stopped, turned, and faced her one last time. Without a word, I handed her the lawyer's business card. "From now on, any communication goes through my lawyer," I said firmly. With that, I went to our room, my hands shaking but my resolve firm. I packed quickly, only essentials, only what I needed to start anew. I finally moved out of my mother-in-law's house and into a small apartment across town. It felt like breathing fresh air for the first time in years. I was on my own now, but I wasn't alone. My dad was with me, and together we were fighting to take back what was rightfully ours. My lawyer, Daxton, worked tirelessly on our case. He was a bulldog in the courtroom, fighting against the fraudulent merger my mother-in-law had orchestrated years ago. It wasn't long before we received the news we had been hoping for. The court ruled in our favor. They found Serafina Wilson guilty of fraud and overturned the merger. Additionally, they imposed a hefty fine on her and awarded me financial compensation. The compensation was just enough to buy out her share in the business. Standing in front of the shop, now fully ours again, felt so real. Without the shadow of Serafina Wilson looming over us, I handed Dad the new keys to the store. "Dad, we did it. It's ours again," I said. We spent the next few weeks renovating the store, making it ours again. Every new coat of paint, every display rearranged felt like reclaiming a piece of my soul that I had lost. Serafina Wilson and Orion were forced to find other jobs. The court costs and the fine took everything they had saved. I heard rumors about their struggles, but I kept my distance. Orion tried to reach out once or twice, but I didn't respond. That part of my life was closed. I was focused on the future now. With the store back under our control, I resumed my college studies. I enrolled in night classes, determined to finish my degree. Sitting in a classroom again, I felt hope, a stark contrast to the despair I had felt under Serafina Wilson's roof. One evening, after closing the shop, my dad and I sat at one of the tables, sharing a pot of coffee. "You know, Alara, starting over like this is more than I could have asked for," Dad said, looking around the shop fondly. I feel the same, Dad. It's like I finally woke up from a long bad dream. We have a second chance here, and I'm not going to waste it, I replied, feeling a strength in my words that I hadn't felt in years. We talked about plans for the future, new products we could introduce, holiday sales to prepare for, and community events we could sponsor. It was exciting, invigorating, and I loved every minute of it.
I'm a 29-year-old woman who recently received a call from my mother, someone I hadn't spoken to in almost 5 years. She reached out because my sister, Melissa, 27, and her husband, who was supposed to be my husband originally, had just gone through a tragedy. To give some background, my sister Melissa hooked up with my fiancé Lucas on the day of our engagement. Lucas and I had been together since college, and he proposed after almost 5 years of dating. He threw a surprise party for us on the night of our engagement, and I was thrilled until around 1 a.m. when I went into the backyard for better reception and caught my sister and Lucas passionately making out. I was shocked and hurt, feeling like my world had crumbled. They didn't notice me at first, but when they did, it was too late. I fled to a nearby hotel, hyperventilating and trying to process what I had seen. Then Melissa texted me, confessing her love for Lucas and admitting this had been going on for a long time. Later, Lucas texted me saying he proposed to me to try and forget Melissa. But it didn't work. He claimed it wasn't about me, it was about him and Melissa being meant for each other. He saw me as a placeholder to finally be with her. I stayed at the hotel for a couple of days, trying to pull myself together, feeling like life was playing a cruel joke on me. After nearly 4 days away, I returned home to collect my things and resume work to avoid getting fired. When I arrived, I discovered that my family had been living with Lucas, waiting for my return. It might have seemed touching under different circumstances, but I had left abruptly, ignoring everyone's attempts to reach out. When I finally showed up, chaos ensued. Everyone rushed to hug me and express relief at my return, even Melissa. She hugged me tearfully, but I was too stunned to react. Eventually, when things calmed down, I announced that I was back only to gather my belongings and leave for good. Lucas had been silent until then, but when I said I was leaving, he mentioned he had already packed and was moving in with Melissa. My family, my parents, aunt, and dad's sister, all smiled widely, despite the situation not being joyful for me. Melissa stood by Lucas, looking sad but still smiling. I couldn't hold back and demanded to know why they were all smiling. As far as I was concerned, Melissa had broken off my engagement and taken my boyfriend of almost 5 years. There was nothing funny or sweet about it. My mother spoke up, explaining they couldn't change the past but could accept the future. They believed Melissa and Lucas belonged together, even if their relationship started from cheating. They were sorry but felt this was for the best. Melissa apologized for falling in love with my boyfriend and wished she could have told me sooner. She acknowledged it was a painful way for me to find out. But they claimed to be deeply in love and committed to each other. Then, right in front of me, they kissed and my mother even wiped a tear from her eye. I couldn't contain myself and told them their behavior was disgusting, not sentimental or emotional. To my surprise, my family seemed annoyed with me, saying I was being bratty and selfish. They thought I should be happy for my sister instead of making it all about myself. I was shocked by their reaction and demanded they leave my house immediately. I couldn't understand how they could defend Melissa and Lucas while painting me as the bad guy. My father intervened, telling me not to act like a child and to accept that these things happen. He wanted me to celebrate my sister finding her soulmate instead of being jealous. I couldn't handle their attitude, so I packed some things and left without waiting to hear them out. They called after me, but I felt they cared more about Melissa's happiness than mine or what was right. They were so focused on justifying Melissa's actions that they forgot about my feelings. After that, my family tried to reach out several times, but I never responded. I didn't feel like I owed them anything after how they treated me. A couple of weeks later, I received an invitation to Melissa and Lucas's wedding, which I declined. Many of our mutual friends also declined the invitation in support of me. Some relatives who knew the truth also distanced themselves from my family after seeing how they treated me. It's been 5 years now, and I've essentially cut my family out of my life completely. They occasionally try to reconnect, sending well wishes on my birthday or New Year, but I always ignore them. I didn't block them, but I removed them from my followers and friends list on social media. I wanted them to see that I was living a great life and maybe feel jealous. It was petty, but it felt like the least I could do after everything they put me through. Until recently, I had no idea what they had been doing in the past few years. Then, about 4 days ago, my mother called me from an unfamiliar number. I almost hung up immediately, but she sounded desperate, so I reluctantly agreed to talk for a couple of minutes. My sense of humanity wouldn't let me turn my back on her completely. When my mother called, she explained that Melissa and Lucas had started a business a couple of years ago, but it was failing badly. Their investors were pulling out because the business wasn't making any profit. Despite borrowing more money, their situation worsened, and now they were deep in debt with loan sharks after them. They were being hounded by employees, investors, and lenders. My mother, aware of my comfortable lifestyle, saw me as a last resort to help them out. She begged me to loan them money, specifically nearly $75,000, to pay off their debts. I asked why Melissa wasn't reaching out herself. My mother explained that Melissa and Lucas have forbidden her from approaching me directly because of what happened 5 years ago. Melissa wasn't ready to accept help from me. For months, my parents and even Lucas's family had been supporting them as much as possible, but it wasn't enough. Both families were retired and needed to support themselves too. My mother felt she had no other option but to ask me for help. I could afford to assist them, but I didn't want to. Melissa had chosen not to contact me for help, and I believed they had lost any right to make demands from me. The day they cheated on me, I told my mother that I couldn't and wouldn't help them, even if I could. My mother sounded upset and said I was being cruel, urging me to think about our family. I pointed out that Melissa and Lucas didn't consider me when they had their affair, and my family didn't think about me when they supported them. So I didn't feel obligated to help them now. I've worked hard to achieve where I am today, and I'm not going to just give $75,000 to two people who don't deserve it. My mother started crying on the phone, calling me selfish and warning that my sister and her husband would face serious trouble if I didn't help. I told her I couldn't help them and hung up. Since then, my mother has been bombarding me with texts every hour, pleading for me to reconsider and think about my sister. She insists this isn't the time for revenge and that I'll regret not helping in the future. I feel torn and unsure of what to say. I don't want to be seen as the bad guy, but I also don't want to help them after what they did. Am I the asshole for refusing to financially help my sister after she stole my fiancé 5 years ago? Update 1. I finally decided to block my family. I kept them around earlier because I wanted them to see my life and maybe feel jealous. I also thought cutting them off completely might be a regret if something bad happened to them, but now I don't care. I should have cut them off 5 years ago. I don't know why I kept them around for so long. Refusing to help my sister now isn't petty. It's just the sensible thing to do. They've already wasted a lot of money, and I doubt they can repay me even if I give them $75,000. While I'm well off, I can't just drop that kind of money without expecting it back. Even if they were close friends, I'd expect repayment. But Melissa and Lucas are neither close to me nor capable of paying me back, so there's no reason for me to help them. I talked to a couple of friends about this, and they agreed that I did the right thing by refusing to give them money, not out of revenge, but because it's impractical and unrealistic to expect me to help after they betrayed me in the past. Blocking my mother means she can't guilt-trip me anymore, so I feel relieved and have nothing to worry about. Update 2. Something major happened today. I was at work when my neighbor called, saying there was a couple outside my house screaming for me to come out and talk to them. My neighbor thought they seemed unstable and had been causing a scene for about an hour. I asked for a description, and deep down, I knew it was Melissa and Lucas. I rushed home immediately because I couldn't risk them getting inside. Luckily, I arrived in about 15 minutes and caught them trying to pick the lock on my door. I confronted them, asking what they were doing. I tried to call the police, but Lucas knocked the phone from my hand before I could. Melissa told me they were just here to talk and didn't want anything from me. Well, not right now, at least. I agreed to talk but insisted it be outside in the yard. I didn't feel comfortable inviting them into my home given the tension. They agreed, which was a relief. Melissa started explaining that my mother had informed her about my phone call and how I had ignored subsequent texts and blocked them all. He told me my behavior was unfair and that I should have moved on by now, 5 years later. He'd accused me of seeking attention from my family with dramatic acts. Melissa said she felt insulted by my refusal to help them and came to discuss it. She mentioned that while she managed to gather money this time by selling their house and jewelry, she might need more in the future. She needed to rely on me for that support. I bluntly told her she couldn't count on me under any circumstances because I despised her and her husband. I was furious and expressed how much I hated them. I was so angry that I mentioned it took a lot of effort not to hit her. Then Lucas insisted I sign a document promising future financial support. I refused, knowing it wouldn't be valid if I was coerced into signing it. I told them both to leave, but Melissa pushed me, saying I owed it to them as family and couldn't run from my responsibilities. I was shocked by her actions and nearly resorted to violence. Instead, I grabbed my phone, which had fallen, and ran to my car. I sped off without looking back. They stayed at my house as I drove away, which was unfortunate for them, but I didn't stop to check. I decided to call the police and report what happened. When I returned home, the police had already arrived within 20 minutes. I explained everything, and they arrested Melissa and Lucas. I knew the charges might not be severe, but it was worth it to have them removed from my life. It's been a couple of hours since then, and I haven't heard from anyone in my family. I expected someone to reach out by now, even from different numbers. But there's been nothing. I'm guessing they're either done with the situation and won't bother me again, or they're waiting for things to calm down before trying to contact me. Update 3. Hi everyone, so it's been about a week since my last update. I had started to think that my family might leave me alone after I called the police on Melissa and Lucas. But unfortunately, I was wrong. Just yesterday, my parents showed up at my house, asking if they could talk to me. They seemed more humble and less arrogant than Melissa and Lucas, so I allowed them in. My mother started crying as soon as she entered and apologized for ever taking Melissa's side over mine. My father explained that after hearing about Melissa and Lucas's arrest and their behavior towards me, they couldn't see them the same way. They decided to cut them off. My mother continued crying while my father expressed regret for not supporting me when I was the victim. While I appreciated my parents finally coming to their senses, I explained that it was too little, too late for things to improve. I had become accustomed to living life on my own terms and didn't want to prioritize my family over myself anymore. Despite their visit and apology, I couldn't promise to work on rebuilding our relationship because I didn't see the point in salvaging something that felt irreparably damaged, even if it was with my parents. They protested a bit, suggesting we could fix things if we wanted to, but my reluctance was clear. I no longer wanted to try. I expressed my respect for their efforts, but reiterated that I was done with the relationship. They seemed disappointed but eventually left, asking if I could at least unblock them to stay in touch. I've unblocked my parents, which feels odd, but I've made my decision.
My name is Adam Harrison, and I'm about to turn 46 this year. I work in sales at the U.S. branch of a French electronics manufacturer. I've always enjoyed leveraging my French language skills, which I excelled in during my student days. It's fulfilling work. When I was younger, I spent about 3 years posted at the company's headquarters in France, and I've returned several times for training and business trips. Despite leading a busy life, I never made time for romance, and I remained single even after turning 45. However, fate had other plans for me last year. On my way back from visiting a client, as I walked down the main street in front of the office, a large man in front of me suddenly collapsed in pain, clutching his stomach. I rushed to his side and asked if he was okay, but he seemed to not understand my words. Speaking to him in French, he explained that his chest hurt and asked me to call an ambulance. I dialed 911 on my mobile phone, and while I was on the call, a sophisticated woman in her 60s approached us, asking what was happening. I explained that the man spoke only French and was having chest pains. She identified herself as a nurse and took charge, asking the man about his pain and checking his pulse. When the ambulance arrived, she relayed detailed information about the man's condition to the paramedics and accompanied him. I was impressed by how efficiently she handled the situation. I later encountered her again when my father, who lived alone, was hospitalized for colon surgery. She happened to be the nurse assigned to my father's room. "Oh, you're the one from the other day. What a coincidence. Thank you again for your help," I said gratefully. "Same here. Is that man all right now?" Yes, thanks to you calling the ambulance quickly, I replied with a smile. You're very good at French, she noted. Not really. I'm self-taught. I've always been interested in French because I enjoy watching French movies and TV dramas. I learned by watching French language programs on YouTube and buying books. That's wonderful. It seems you can speak French too. I work for the US branch of a French company, so I can speak a little. Have you been to France? She asked. Yes, I have, I replied. She had also been to France on a trip. From then on, whenever we saw each other, we started talking more. Her name was Susan Miller, and she was almost 60 years old. She had a bright personality and a beautiful smile, and talking to her was always enjoyable. I had always wanted to talk more with Susan. Looking back, I realized I had fallen for her at first sight. The age difference didn't matter to me. She was incredibly attractive. Through our conversations, I learned she was divorced and currently single, with her daughter already married and living on her own. I felt it wouldn't be a problem to ask her out. On the day my father was discharged from the hospital, I mustered the courage and asked Susan for her contact information. She happily agreed, and we exchanged details. Once home, I wasted no time and invited her out to dinner. Since then, we've enjoyed several dinners and movie outings together. The more I got to know her, the more I was drawn to her charms. Susan was kind, caring, always cheerful and positive. Talking to her healed and energized me, even when work left me tired or troubled. About 6 months into dating, I proposed to her. Susan, will you marry me? I asked as I showed her the ring I had prepared. She teared up and asked, Are you sure you're okay with someone much older like me? Age didn't matter to me. I wanted her. I can't imagine being with anyone else. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, I reassured her, holding her hand. With tears of joy, she replied, Thank you. I want to live my life with you too, honey. My proposal was successful. Susan didn't want a wedding ceremony, but when she turned 60 and retired from nursing, we took a 2-week honeymoon to Bordeaux and Paris in France. It was a lavish trip to celebrate her 60th birthday and retirement. We stayed in luxury hotels and dined at 3-star restaurants. Having saved quite a bit since being single until 45 and without any particular hobbies, it felt like a perfect way to start our new life together. Therefore, I could afford that extravagant trip. Susan was delighted, and seeing her frolic like a young girl made me glad we went. One morning, about half a year into our married life, I was called by my boss just as I was about to head to work. The president of an important client at our headquarters in France is coming to the US with his wife. We're hosting a dinner party, and I'd like you to attend with your wife. My boss Ryan said, specifying the date. I'll let you know the place once it's decided. Understood, I replied, noting it down. Suddenly, Ryan laughed. To think you'd have a wife, huh? I thought you'd never get married. Good for you, finding someone with peculiar taste. His scornful gaze met mine. Ryan wasn't around the same age as me, but he always boasted about his much younger and beautiful wife. He constantly belittled me, suggesting I must be lonely being single at my age, or that no woman with peculiar tastes would marry someone like me. To still hear such things even after getting married irked me, but I kept silent. I worried about exposing Susan to potential unpleasant comments from such a boss, but it was an order, so I had no choice. The day of the dinner party arrived. I took Susan to the specified restaurant, an upscale steakhouse. After saying the name of the person who made the reservation, we were guided to a private room where Ryan and his wife were waiting. True to Ryan's boasting, his wife was indeed a slender beauty like a model. Thank you for your patience, Ryan, I greeted him. Ryan looked at Susan, who was standing behind me, and said, Adam, why did you bring your mother? You promised to bring your wife, didn't you? Hearing those words, anger rushed to my head. He had a malicious smile on his lips, probably knowing full well what he was saying. That level of harassment was almost impressive. She's not my mother. Let me introduce you. This is my wife, Susan, I said firmly. Susan offered a forced smile, but I could tell she was hurting inside. I couldn't forgive Ryan for insulting her. I decided then that if he made another disrespectful remark, I would not hold back my response. Soon after, our client Lewis arrived with a young employee guiding him. "Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Lewis. Excuse me, but my wife Emma is in the restroom. I'll introduce her later," he said in French. Ryan, his wife, Susan, and I all introduced ourselves in French. Ryan's wife appeared uncomfortable, not being fluent in French and barely speaking beyond stating her name, relying on Ryan to answer any questions from Lewis. In contrast, my wife Susan was so fluent in French that she could engage in a lively conversation with Lewis. This seemed to irritate Ryan and his wife. "Anyway, Adam, I'm surprised you decided to marry someone so much older," Ryan suddenly remarked in English. "No matter how well she speaks French, why would you choose someone who looks so mature? Everyone knows younger is better. Or do you have a thing for mature women? How old is your wife anyway?" He was incredibly rude. Susan looks her age but possesses a beauty that comes with years. Her wonderful personality was why I fell for her. Being ridiculed with such shallow words felt like a total dismissal of my love for Susan. "Excuse me, that's incredibly disrespectful," I retorted, my fists clenched in anger. "What? You're talking back to your boss?" Ryan smirked, clearly enjoying the moment. Not understanding the English exchange, Lewis looked confused. "There are things you don't say, no matter if you're my boss," I continued firmly. "It's okay. You don't have to defend me. I knew what I was signing up for when I married you," Susan whispered, pulling on my sleeve. Just then, the private room's door opened, and a woman entered, guided by a staff member. "Emma, over here. Everyone, let me introduce you to my wife, Emma," Lewis announced, standing up. Emma was an elegant woman around 60 years old. She glared at Ryan and began to speak fluent English. "I heard your conversation. I am very displeased. Apologize to them right now," Emma demanded. Ryan was speechless, caught off guard by her firm tone. I'm sorry," he stammered. "Not to me. Apologize to them," Emma insisted, her anger unabated. Turning to us, Ryan apologized. "Adam and Susan, I'm terribly sorry for my rude comments. Please forgive me." Emma explained the situation to Lewis in French. Then, turning back to us, she said, "What an incredibly rude thing to say. I refuse to dine with someone who speaks so thoughtlessly. I'm leaving." It was Emma who calmed down Lewis, who was still fuming with anger. Ryan quietly left with his wife. That's when we properly introduced ourselves to Emma. "Nice to meet you. I'm Susan, Adam's wife," Susan recounted. Hearing Susan introduce herself, Emma's eyes widened. "Susan? Are you Susan Miller?" "Yes, I am," Susan confirmed. "Oh my goodness. I'm Emma Anderson, your pen pal." Emma exclaimed excitedly, switching to French to continue. "Really? You're that Emma?" Susan looked equally surprised. They held hands, rejoicing over this serendipitous meeting. Listening to their story, it turned out they had met on an online forum and had been exchanging emails for over 20 years. Susan taught Emma English, and Emma taught Susan French. That explained why Emma spoke English. Susan was shy, so they had never video called before. That's why they didn't recognize each other's faces. What a coincidence! To meet a pen pal from overseas like this, Susan marveled. The dinner went well with Emma and Susan's conversation taking center stage. The food was delicious, and Lewis and Emma enjoyed it too. That was really fun. I can't forgive Ryan's remarks, but I'm truly happy Emma and Susan met by chance, I reflected. Lewis had heard about Emma's longtime pen pal before. "I'm very satisfied. Having enjoyed the local cuisine, I'll mention this to our headquarters in France," Lewis said after the meal. The couple left, and the reception seemed to have been a success. That night at home, Susan said to me, "Adam, thank you for standing up to Ryan earlier. I acted tough, but if you had agreed with him, I would have been deeply hurt. I was relieved and happy you spoke up for me." "Of course I would. No matter who he is, I can't allow anyone to speak ill of my dear Susan." But you mentioned you had prepared yourself for this when we got married. I didn't know you felt that way. It was a bit of a shock. Well, we do have a 14-year age difference. I don't look young, and the age gap is quite obvious, isn't it? I was ready for people to say things, but it was good that your parents agreed to our marriage without any objection. My goodness, that you needed such preparation to marry me. Again, thank you for marrying me, Susan. That's nothing compared to the happiness of being with you, she said, smiling warmly. Seeing her smile, I felt even more affection for her. A few days after Louis returned to France, I received news that a major deal with his company had been finalized. He had insisted on sending his regards to me. It seems Louis also reported Ryan's inappropriate comments to our headquarters, resulting in him being demoted to a regular employee. I was promoted to manager in his place, reversing our positions. Since that day, he has never looked down on me again. He became quite subdued, showing respect towards me, which was satisfying. Susan and Emma continued their friendship through emails and calls. Susan is now planning a trip to Lyon, where Emma lives. Seeing Susan excitedly talk about it, I wanted to continue to protect her smile. I want to make her happy, that's what I thought. My husband's family and I have a complicated history, especially with my mother-in-law. To provide some context, my husband Kyle is the younger of 2 children in his family and has always been viewed as the favored child, despite having an older sister. My mother-in-law, Monica, is a clinical narcissist who always made everything about herself. She would even demand gifts on birthdays, claiming her children wouldn't exist without her. Kyle has shared with me that growing up, his achievements were always overshadowed by his mother's need for attention. Initially, when I began dating Kyle and visiting their home, my mother-in-law seemed pleasant enough, but her behavior deteriorated as our relationship grew more serious. Over the years, she became increasingly difficult, especially after we decided to marry 3 years ago. Planning our wedding became a nightmare because of my mother-in-law interference. Thankfully, Kyle and I had agreed early on to finance the wedding ourselves to prevent family members from taking over. When my mother-in-law tried to change our wedding plans, suggesting alterations to the venue layout, I politely declined her ideas. She complained to Kyle, who tried to mediate and find a compromise, but I insisted that our decisions were final. For our wedding, I envisioned a casual, non-religious celebration with a mismatched bridal party featuring a loose color palette. The only thing I had requested from my mother-in-law and the rest of my bridesmaids was to choose a dress within our color palette and show it to me before purchasing. My mother and the other bridesmaids complied, showing me their choices without issue. However, my mother-in-law never showed me any options despite my repeated requests leading up to the wedding. On the day of the event, to everyone's shock, my mother-in-law arrived wearing an off-white dress, a medium-length outfit with a transparent chiffon layer and a bolero. She looked smugly triumphant as she noticed my reaction, which left me in tears. Immediately, my husband intervened and asked her to change or leave. Unfortunately, my father-in-law didn't want to drive her back and ended up arguing with my husband. Eventually, to keep the peace, I reluctantly allowed my mother-in-law to stay in her dress. The situation was incredibly embarrassing for our guests, who were clearly surprised by her attire. Throughout the wedding, I ignored her completely and didn't exchange a single word. My husband, aware of my distress, urged me to let it go, reminding me that no matter what, I was the bride. However, his lack of understanding regarding the inappropriateness of his mother's choice upset me deeply. I eventually forgave her, although she never apologized for her actions. Her narcissism didn't stop there. When we were trying to conceive, it was a challenging time for us, especially after experiencing a miscarriage. Naturally, I was quite nervous when I found out I was pregnant again. Kyle was thrilled about becoming a dad and supported me throughout, attending every doctor's appointment, reading parenting books together, and even setting up a lovely nursery for our baby-to-be. 2 months later, we felt ready to share our exciting news with our families and close friends. We wanted to ensure we passed the critical first trimester before spreading the joy. We hosted a lunch gathering, inviting our parents, close family, and friends. As they noticed my growing stomach, their expressions shifted to joy and amazement. My mother teared up with happiness when she confirmed my pregnancy and understood why we had kept it private. She was thrilled about becoming a grandmother. However, Kyle's mother, Monica, had a starkly different reaction. Instead of sharing in the joy, she responded angrily upon learning that we had kept the pregnancy a secret. She felt left out and accused me of intentionally excluding her, disregarding our reasons for waiting to share the news. Despite my efforts to explain our reasons, Monica remained visibly upset and refused further engagement with me. Her disapproval overshadowed what should have been a joyful occasion. Throughout the evening, she ignored me and displayed disrespect not only towards me but also towards my mother, who had always been kind to her in the past. Monica remained withdrawn, buried in her phone during conversations while everyone else engaged in the family gathering. It was clear she was upset, openly expressing her feelings of being left out of knowing about my pregnancy sooner. Her discontentment was palpable and added tension to the evening. As her frustration became more apparent, my husband and his brother noticed. The tension escalated until I reached a breaking point and stepped out to gather myself. My mother, noticing my distress, came to comfort me until I felt composed enough to return. Towards the end of the night, Monica made a deliberate effort to say goodbye to me, highlighting her disapproval and the strain on our relationship. As the day came to a close, Monica's interactions with me were limited to mere greetings. Later, when my husband escorted them to their car, a heated argument erupted that I could hear clearly from the foyer. Monica seized the opportunity to escalate her complaints about me, venting her frustrations. By then, all our guests had left, leaving just my parents, Kyle, and his parents. Monica angrily expressed disbelief that I had kept the pregnancy from her, insisting that I didn't consider her family at all. In response, my husband calmly explained that we both wanted to ensure everything was safe before sharing the news with everyone. Monica's reaction intensified into yelling, insisting that as the grandmother, she deserved to know from the start. She criticized my husband for letting me dictate things and challenged his trust in her. Kyle, embarrassed and miserable, faced his mother as she continued her tirade. Tears streamed down my face as Monica's sharp words left me hurt and bewildered. I tried to intervene, but my mother stopped me, warning that any response from me would only escalate the situation further. She was right. I knew Monica was looking for a fight. Despite my mother-in-law provocations, I refused to engage and kept my mouth shut. She persisted in insisting that Kyle should see things her way and accused me of controlling him. My father-in-law eventually intervened, calming her down and driving her away. Unfortunately, this behavior wasn't isolated. It was just one instance in a long list of entitlement and overreactions. For example, she tried to get our baby to call her Ma instead of Grandma, which infuriated me. She would also boast about babysitting and helping us excessively, exaggerating her role. During my post-pregnancy health issues, she criticized my mothering skills and urged me to prioritize her grandchild over myself. Despite these challenges, I tolerated her for the sake of my husband. Recently, my in-laws moved to a new place and kept inviting us to visit. Kyle encouraged me to go alone with our child, Debbie, to appease his mother, who was persistently asking him to visit. Reluctantly, I agreed and planned a visit on a weekend when Debbie had a friend's birthday party. On a sunny Friday afternoon, I dropped Debbie off at the party and headed to my in-laws' new home. The property was impressive, indicating my father-in-law had invested heavily for retirement. The house blended modern and classic styles, set in a beautiful yard with lush greenery and fragrant flowers. When I arrived and rang the doorbell, my mother-in-law opened the door with excitement, assuming it was Kyle. Her expression quickly changed when she saw it was just me, and she asked where Kyle and Debbie were. I explained to my mother-in-law that Kyle had an appointment and Debbie was attending her friend's birthday party, which clearly upset her. She began complaining about our parents' selfishness in not finding time to spend with her. Awkwardly, I changed the topic by expressing interest in checking out her new place. Inside, the house was just as impressive as the exterior. The entrance boasted high ceilings and tasteful decorations. My sister-in-law, Haley, and her 11-year-old son, Jake, were also present. I greeted them warmly, though Haley, like her mother, seemed distant towards me. It was hard to tell if it was personal or to appease her mother. My mother-in-law explained that my father-in-law was out with friends, so she had invited Haley and Jake over for some quality time. I nodded politely and tried to engage with Jake by asking about school. However, my mother-in-law abruptly shifted the conversation to her recent clothing purchases, expressing a desire for my advice on her new wardrobe. This caught me off guard, as she had never sought my advice before. I managed a polite response, agreeing to help. Despite our complicated history, I decided to embrace the opportunity to bond over something as simple as fashion. She seemed pleased and led me to her pride and joy, her newly built walk-in closet. As we admired her extensive collection of clothes, shoes, and accessories, she eagerly sought my opinions on colors, styles, and accessories. It felt surreal given our rocky relationship, but I did my best to provide thoughtful suggestions and be helpful. My mother-in-law encouraged me to check out her closet, saying she would be right back. As I was looking through her new clothes, I heard the sound of running feet behind me. Before I could react, Jake, with mischievous laughter, gave me a push, causing me to stumble and fall face first into the closet. The impact left my head and teeth hurting, and I was initially disoriented. As I gathered my senses, I realized that Jake had swiftly locked the closet door behind me, plunging me into darkness. Panic set in as I felt confined and terrified, desperately banging on the door and calling out for mother-in-law and Sil for help. My pleas seemed to go unheard, or perhaps they were choosing to ignore my distress. Frantically, I fumbled for my phone and managed to switch on the flashlight. But my anxiety grew as I noticed my battery was low. My childhood fear of darkness resurfaced, stemming from a traumatic incident where I accidentally locked myself in my grandmother's closet during a game of hide and seek, and she struggled to find me due to her hearing impairment. Despite my repeated attempts to reach mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I was met with silence, which intensified my sense of isolation. Confused and desperate, I finally dialed my husband's number. When Kyle answered casually, I explained the dire situation with desperation in my voice. He seemed unfazed and asked for more details. I recounted how Jake had pushed me into the closet and locked me inside with the lights off. I pleaded for help as I continued to bang on the door. No one had come to rescue me, and my fear of dark spaces was escalating. When I called Kyle for help, hoping for sympathy, he responded coldly, dismissing my distress as non-emergency and instructing me to call his mother instead. Frustrated, I explained that I had already tried calling both his mother and sister multiple times without success. With my phone battery draining rapidly from using the flashlight, I pleaded with Kyle to come over, reminding him of my fear of darkness that he knew well. However, Kyle remained unmoved, stating he was too busy to come and suggesting I find someone else to help. Stunned and increasingly panicked, I continued to bang on the closet door and call out to mother-in-law and sister-in-law, but their phones remained silent. Feeling trapped and helpless, I reluctantly dialed my father-in-law, Phil, the only person left I could reach out to. Despite knowing he had been out with friends, I hoped he would answer. He picked up, and I nervously explained the situation, disclosing that Jake had locked me in the closet. Despite my attempts to reach out for help, no one was responding. When I finally managed to contact Phil, he assured me he would rush home and was surprised that neither mother-in-law nor sister-in-law had heard my calls all this time. After what felt like an eternity, I heard voices outside, Phil yelling instructions to unlock the closet door. Relief washed over me as I realized help was finally arriving. The door creaked open, flooding the dark space with light. Phil and Sil stood there, their faces a mix of concern and frustration. I emerged from the closet feeling disoriented, but immensely grateful to be free from that confined space. Phil demanded an explanation from mother-in-law about why I had been locked in her closet. Mother-in-law feigned innocence, but I recounted the incident, explaining how Jake had pushed me in and locked the door. To my dismay, both mother-in-law and sister-in-law scoffed at my account, dismissing it entirely and claiming Jake would never do such a thing. Frustrated and angry, I demanded to know why they hadn't responded to my calls or banging on the door. Their excuse was that they were in the backyard, with mother-in-law showing off her new rose garden to Haley and Jake. I turned my anger towards Jake, questioning him directly about why he had locked me inside. Sil interrupted, vehemently defending her son and accusing me of fabricating the story. Their blatant lies left me feeling overwhelmed with frustration and disbelief, especially as it didn't explain how the lights had been turned off. Phil attempted to calm me down, but I knew that mother-in-law and sister-in-law would continue to defend each other regardless of what I said. Defeated and hurt, I realized that the situation was unlikely to be resolved to my satisfaction. When I returned home, still trembling with shock, I called my mother to apologize for not picking up Debbie and explained she might need to stay at their place for the night. I was too shaken to explain what had happened just yet. Waiting for my husband to return, I anticipated confronting him about his family's actions. During dinner, I recounted the incident to my husband, hoping for understanding. Instead, he berated me, accusing me of overreacting and being childish. He dismissed my concerns, refusing to believe that his family would intentionally mistreat me. Gaslighting me, he justified why he couldn't come to help, making me doubt myself. To avoid further conflict, I retreated to bed, feeling profoundly lonely and misunderstood. The weight of the incident lingered heavily, compounded by the dismissiveness from my husband. The next day, while grappling with the emotional aftermath, I received a TikTok link from my cousin. Horrified, I watched the video showing my nephew, Jake, recording the incident and shamelessly sharing it as a prank on TikTok. Seeing Jake's laughter enraged me, and I shared the video in our family chat, demanding apologies now that I had proof. Mother-in-law brushed off the seriousness, claiming it was funny, and sister-in-law echoed her sentiments, dismissing it as a harmless prank. Frustrated, I warned them that if Jake didn't remove the video, I would take legal action. Mother-in-law dismissive response and lack of empathy pushed me over the edge. Frustrated and determined to make them understand the seriousness of the situation, I took action. I immediately called the police, providing them with the TikTok video as evidence. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, the police agreed to visit sister-in-law and question her about her 11-year-old child having a TikTok account and posting such prank videos. Sil called me angrily, questioning my audacity for filing a complaint against her. I stood my ground, informing her that I was prepared to take legal action. When she continued to yell, I calmly mentioned that I was recording the conversation and would share it with my lawyer. This silenced her, highlighting the severity of the situation. I felt a sense of justice in teaching my husband's family a lesson for their actions, ensuring they understood the consequences of locking me inside a closet for over an hour. Update 1. In just a few hours, I've received thousands of comments, and I'm grateful that the majority understand why I involved the police. My in-laws have been calling me repeatedly, urging me to withdraw my statement to the police. As of now, no official case has been filed since my nephew is still a child, and the police are investigating to determine the appropriate course of action. When my husband returned from work, he erupted upon learning about the situation. He had tried calling me during the day, but was unable to reach me due to my involvement with the police. Kyle believes that my actions have irreparably damaged the family and insists that I am overreacting to what he views as harmless behavior from Jake, citing his age as justification for not punishing him. I've discussed this with my parents and my sister, all of whom are shocked by the lack of response from my husband and his family, especially given my fear of dark spaces. My dad had a serious conversation with my husband, emphasizing that if I had called for help while trapped in the closet, it was his responsibility to either come to my aid or immediately involve his parents to get me out. The fact that he did neither is troubling to me and my family. Update 2. It's been a week since my last update, and there has been a significant development. Sister-in-law husband, Vic, who was out of town, returned and learned about the incident between me and Jake. He was furious and immediately demanded that Jake take down the video and apologize to me in person. Vic visited me to discuss the situation further. When Vic arrived at our place with Jake, the atmosphere was tense. Jake looked remorseful, as if he had been severely scolded. Vic gave him a stern look, and Jake promptly apologized to me. During our conversation, Jake revealed that while he did push me into the closet, he felt pressured by mother-in-law. He explained that he used to share prank videos with mother-in-law, and when he expressed hesitation about trying them on family members, mother-in-law encouraged him by suggesting I wasn't technically family since I was just married to my husband. This appalling revelation shocked me. Vic asked Jake if he was being truthful, emphasizing the seriousness of the accusation. Jake broke down in tears, inviting us to check his phone, where we found conversations confirming mother-in-law encouragement of these actions. After saving the screenshots to my phone, I advised Jake strongly against following mother-in-law suggestions, emphasizing that it was inappropriate and wrong. Jake nodded solemnly, and Vic expressed his dismay, acknowledging how sickening the situation was and reconsidering allowing his child to be around mother-in-law. Understanding Vic's concerns, I assured him that I would discuss the matter with my lawyer and the police. However, I emphasized that I would retract my statement on the condition that Jake never uploaded the video again or retained a copy of it. Jake confirmed that he had deleted the video and no longer had a copy. Since my conversation with Vic and Jake, I've begun to question my entire relationship with mother-in-law. It's now clear that she orchestrated the incident and encouraged a child to act on her behalf, which is deeply troubling. I cannot allow myself to be around someone who harbors such animosity towards me and is willing to go to such lengths. Moving forward, I am committed to protecting myself and ensuring that mother-in-law actions do not go unchecked. Update 3. Hello everyone. It's been 4 months since my last update. I've moved out of my husband's place and am currently staying with my parents. As previously updated, my mother-in-law was indeed behind everything. When I confronted her with the screenshots, she initially denied her involvement, claiming my nephew must have manipulated them. However, her lies quickly unraveled when I threatened legal action. Eventually, she begrudgingly admitted to pre-planning the incident with my nephew. She confessed that she saw my visit as the perfect opportunity to play the prank on me. Mother-in-law even claimed that sister-in-law was in on it and enjoyed hearing my distress. She pleaded with me not to pursue legal action, promising it would never happen again. Fortunately, I had recorded our entire conversation. I ended the call with her and forwarded the voice recording to our group chats so everyone could hear mother-in-law admission. I also messaged sister-in-law, expressing my disappointment and hoping her son would grow up to be a better person. As for my husband, our relationship deteriorated further each day. Despite the screenshots and voice recording of his own mother's admission, he never apologized for what his family put me through. Seeing my family rally behind me helped me realize I wasn't overreacting and that what happened was deeply wrong. It's been a big deal for me, even though I decided not to pursue legal action. I couldn't forgive or forget what his family did to me. After everything that happened and my husband's continued support for them, I realized there was no way forward for our marriage. I tried to salvage it, but when your own partner stands by his mother's hurtful actions despite your feelings, you start to realize you deserve better. I moved out so we could begin divorce proceedings. Surprisingly, he didn't seem shocked when I told him I wanted a divorce and didn't fight me on it. It's been incredibly difficult to go through this. I truly loved my husband and imagined a future with him. But these past few months have been eye-opening. I deserve to prioritize myself. I'm grateful to everyone in the comment section and my family for helping me see the truth about my husband and his family. It's a tough journey, but I'm focusing on what's best for me now. It's been almost 2 years since I lost my daughter Lily. The tears have long dried up, leaving behind an unbearable sense of loss that weighs on me like lead throughout my body. My name is Mark Thompson. My wife Kate passed away early on. She was never in good health, and there were risks during Lily's birth. Still, I honored Kate's wish to have a child. As childbirth approached and her life faded, she smiled at the end, saying, "Please take care of our daughter." Her image often blends with Lily in my recent memories. Since then, I've tried to fill the void by immersing myself in parenting struggles. My love for Lily deepened as she grew, and our time together was cherished. I imagined telling Kate about Lily if we ever met again. Those were genuinely happy times, until they were shattered one day. Lily was about to start elementary school and must have been practicing her route to the school bus stop alone, proudly wearing the backpack I'd bought her. As she walked at a crosswalk, she was hit by a drunk driver. It was a tragic event condensed into a brief news report. Lily had followed all the rules. She did nothing wrong. Why should my daughter have been taken? I couldn't summon the energy to curse or confront the sobbing, apologizing driver. All I could do was stand in shock in front of Lily's lifeless body. It felt like a scene from a TV show, unreal to me. At the funeral, I couldn't cry, but I broke down screaming and crying when I saw Lily's backpack at home. After that, I lived a hollow life. Eventually, my boss encouraged me to take a long leave of absence. I knew I lacked motivation at work and couldn't burden my colleagues anymore, so I gratefully accepted the offer. I found myself wandering aimlessly outside, often ending up at the local park. One day, as I sat blankly on a bench, I noticed a crowd in the distance, a group of kids around Lily's age, teasing one in the middle. I pushed my way through the kids, possibly yelling. I don't remember clearly. Suddenly, the group scattered like spiders. "Are you okay?" I asked the crouching child who looked up at me. My heart nearly stopped. The girl looked just like Lily. Frozen, unable to speak, I watched as she stood up and quietly said, "Thank you," before starting to walk away. "Wait." I blurted out loudly. It was the first time since Lily's death. Are you thirsty? Do you want some juice?" Nervously, I pulled out a bottle of orange juice I had bought for later. "I like orange," she replied. Relieved, I made a nonsensical excuse. "It's still unopened, you know," before handing her the bottle. She accepted it happily, smiling shyly. When she smiled, she looked even more like Lily, causing a faint pain in my heart. I sat down on the bench beside her. The girl introduced herself as Mia. She preferred orange juice over apple juice, dogs over cats, and slides over swings. Lately, she had been wondering why the dogwoods had to lose their leaves. "They'd look so much prettier if they just stayed in bloom," she mused. Not giving a specific answer, I mentioned that it was getting cold, so we should probably head back soon. As we were about to leave the park, Mia murmured, looking down, "Can we meet again?" I gently placed my hand on her head. "I'm here in this park every day around this time. If you feel like it, come by then." Her face lit up brightly. "Really? I'll come every day." True to her word, Mia came to the park every day after that. The bullies hadn't shown their faces in the park since that incident. "Did I scare them that much?" I asked Mia, to which she replied with a mischievous grin. "I've also started standing up for myself more." Recently, Mia would excitedly talk about things that happened at school or a strangely shaped rock she found on the side of the road. I shared stories from my childhood, like having a dog or the time I brought home so many bugs that I nearly gave my mother a heart attack. Strangely, we never tried to talk about our current families. The more I looked at Mia, the more she resembled Lily. If Lily had started elementary school, maybe we would have talked like this. I realized I was looking for Lily and Mia, not without a sense of guilt. Was I just replacing Lily with this child? Sometimes I fell into self-loathing with that thought. but I didn't have the courage to let go of those moments with Mia. I need to tell you, Mia started one day looking sad. I'm going to start after-school activities next month. The activities would be on weekdays after school until 3 p.m. I'm going to do that with a friend from school, so I won't be able to spend as much time as before. But can I still come to see you in the evenings? How could I say no? That night, my boss contacted me, suggesting that I could return to work, even if only for a short time each day. The hours would be from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. A rare arrangement apparently made possible because my colleagues had spoken to my boss on my behalf. After that, Mia and I started meeting after her activities and my work. My colleagues, who had waited for my return, said I seemed different from just before my long leave, with some even getting emotional about it. They said I seemed softer. When I was living with Lily, I never wanted to use parenting as an excuse to slack off at work. I must have been pretty desperate after losing Lily. I had been a mess. Despite repeatedly turning down invitations for meals from friends and colleagues, they never gave up on me. Now I'm realizing just how much support I had around me. I'm filled with gratitude for my colleagues, my boss, and most of all, for Mia, who gave me a chance to find my way back to life. But I can't keep depending on this kindness forever. When I was starting to think about getting back to my regular work schedule, Mia showed up at the park one day looking downcast. Even when I tried to talk to her as usual, she was unresponsive, and the conversation didn't flow. What's wrong? Did something happen? I was worried she might be getting bullied by those kids again. After a while of silence, she looked up at me with a pained expression, and tears started to overflow. As she began to cry, I comforted her and slowly got her to talk. That's when I first learned about her family situation. Mia was an orphan who had been raised in a facility. She had started the after-school activities because volunteers had come to the facility, and she felt obliged to join, due to the orphanage's curfew until 5 p.m. She would leave immediately after her activities, ended to meet me until that time every day. Now, due to the circumstances at the orphanage, it had been decided that she would move to a facility in the next city over. As she finished telling me everything through her sobs, she murmured, "I'm sorry for not saying this for so long. I thought you'd hate me if I told you I lived in an orphanage, so I just couldn't bring myself to say it for the longest time. That's silly. No matter where you are, you're still Mia. I love you no matter what, and that won't change," I reassured her. She nodded happily several times. If she were my real daughter, I wouldn't hesitate to hug her tight. Then, with tears in her eyes, she looked straight at me. "I'll come here every day, so can we still meet?" Of course, I wanted to say. We'll meet every day. However, it would take more than an hour for Mia to get here from the new orphanage using public transportation. It's not realistic for Mia to travel that distance by herself every day. Having lost a daughter myself, the thought of her being in danger is unbearable. As I hesitated to respond, Mia also became silent, looking down. She probably knew it was an impossible request. "Mia, can you hear my story?" I chose my words carefully, speaking slowly to make it easy for her to understand. I told her about losing my daughter and starting to take time off work, and how meeting Mia had begun to bring color back into my world. She listened silently as I spoke. After finishing my story, I took a deep breath. "Mia, we won't be able to meet like this anymore. You're smart, so you understand, right?" Mia nodded slightly. A child who lost her parents and a parent who lost his child. We were just filling voids for each other. But the time for playing family is over. We have to face reality. It's time for both Mia and me to start walking on solid ground again. Let's make a promise, okay? Mia's shoulders twitched slightly. She looked up and repeated, "A promise?" with curiosity. "In 10 years, when the dogwoods are in full bloom, let's meet here again. By then, you'll surely be a wonderful adult able to come here on your own. I'll do my best too, so there'll be a competition to see who can become a better adult." My voice probably shook a bit towards the end, trying not to let her notice. I gently patted her head, as I always do. Her face lit up as she nodded vigorously. Yes, she said with a genuine smile. She extended her pinky towards me. Pinky swear? Taken aback but amused by her usual demeanor, I laughed and linked pinkies with her. I watched Mia wave goodbye and leave the park until she was out of sight. Then, I collapsed to my knees and cried. At first, I had overlaid Lily's image onto Mia, but as we spent time together, Mia became an irreplaceable presence in her own right, distinct from Lily. The promise to meet again in 10 years. It was made without specifying a day or time, just the season. Mia didn't even know my name. I'm sure she will forget about me eventually. Even without me, she can live a happy life. For me, thanks to meeting Mia, I found the courage to live again. Her presence made me want to face my own life head-on. I can't depend on her forever. After all, she's not my daughter. I cried unabashedly, sobs escaping me. When I finally looked up at the sky, tired from crying, beautiful stars were shining in the dark sky. Strangely, my heart felt clear. It felt like Kate and Lily were watching over me. The encounter with Mia must have been necessary for me to move forward. I hope the time spent with me was meaningful for her too. Perhaps my late wife and daughter had a hand in our meeting. I slapped my face to psych myself up and hurried home, thinking about the future to come. Before I knew it, 10 years had passed. Now I am sitting calmly on that park bench and looking at the dogwoods. The day after that day, I went to my boss first thing in the morning and asked to return to my normal duties. With his approval, I worked hard to make up for the time I had missed, wanting to be someone Mia and Lily wouldn't be ashamed of. My efforts paid off. I became relied upon again at work, with my colleagues saying, "The old Mark is back." I eventually got promoted and gradually began to regain confidence in myself. And just like that, 10 years flew by. In those 10 years, I hadn't looked at the flowering dogwoods. Actually, I avoided them because they reminded me of Mia. I couldn't answer her question about why dogwoods fall. Now, I think I can do it properly. Dogwoods are beautiful because they fall. People find value in their blooming and falling. Kate and Lily bloomed fully and then fell. But what I always remember isn't their departure, but all the smiles and memories they left behind. Life is like dogwoods. Everyone will eventually fall, but there's always a time when they bloom fully. You've got a way with words, an answer that shouldn't come back, and a mischievous smile that I shouldn't see, flipped through my mind and dissipated. I've run through these 10 years with all my might. If I could meet Mia and Lily again, would they smile and wave at me? Have I become the cool adult I wanted to be for them? Breathing in the spring air deeply and smelling the dogwoods, I closed my eyes. I felt a gust of wind and the sensation of flower petals dancing. At the same time, I heard, "Never forget our pinky promise, right?" A voice more mature, but still familiar to my ears sounded behind me. Slowly, I opened my eyes and stood up. "Thank goodness," I said with disbelief. I awkwardly turned around. "This one hasn't been opened yet, okay," the girl, now in a uniform, said with a playful smile. In her hand was a bottle of orange juice. Another 10 years have passed since that day of reunion. I'm looking at the dogwoods again, this time with Mia by my side. How many times is this now, watching the dogwoods together like this? Murmurs Mia, who has grown up to be beautiful. I'm not sure, since we've seen them every year since the 11th time when we reunited, she told me. I'm not a kid anymore, so stop patting my head, she said, scrunching up her face. Or is it the 12th? I continued, to which she laughed. You're as vague as ever. Her smile seemed even more beautiful, not just because she's at that age, but because today, Maya shines brighter than anyone. That day 10 years ago, I was stunned as I watched the girl approach me. I flashed back to the first time I looked into Mia's eyes from a close distance, just like when we first met and she was being bullied. I can't remember how we conversed after that. Next thing I knew, I was being taken to the orphanage where Mia lived. You're the person Mia always talked about. The teacher in charge of Mia at the orphanage looked at me with deep emotion. From the beginning, she had talked about our promise to win the competition of who could become a better adult. She devoted herself to her studies, was active in sports and volunteer activities. Mia has also been a big help looking after the younger kids. I'd always thought it must be because of the man's influence. I've always wondered what kind of person the man was, said the teacher with a laugh, implying she had been worried I might be someone weird. I learned that Mia had been visiting that park daily for a week since the dogwoods started blooming, waiting with an unopened bottle of orange juice. When the teacher told me that, I couldn't help but cry. She pretended not to notice. That day, dragged by Mia, I played with the kids at the orphanage with all my might and suffered from muscle aches the following day. Since then, I've met with Mia frequently, advising her on her career path and love life. Something about love I might not have been able to do with my own daughter. I wonder about that. I hear a voice that couldn't possibly be Lily's. Is that Kate chuckling beside her? Mark, lost in these thoughts, Mia's voice snapped me back to the present. Thank you for today, she said, blushing slightly in her pure white dress. Dressed in a tuxedo I was not used to, I stood with Mia arm in arm, looking at the dogwoods in front of the church. Mia, make sure you're happy, I managed to say, unable to find the words to tell her how beautiful she was. Mia teared up a bit at my words, her face scrunching up as she smiled, saying, yes. What kind of bride scrunches up her face like that? I joked, struggling to hold back my own tears. I walked with her into the church. Inside, there were her teachers, friends, and many people who had colored her life. At the end of the wedding aisle, a young man who would continue to love her stood, smiling warmly. Mia, you've really become beautiful, not just on the outside, but inside as well. Life is a series of hardships. Maybe the happy times are like the moment when dogwoods are in full bloom. Being able to savor and feel happiness might be the most important part of life. Mark, it's time for the toast. Mia called out to me, snapping me out of my reverie. Laughter broke out around us, and my face flushed. I didn't hear anything about leading a toast, shooting her a mock glare. I was met with that unchanged, mischievous smile of hers from years past. Seeing the smile, my concerns faded away, and I raised my glass. Mia, thank you for making me the father of the bride. My ex-wife recently passed away in an accident. I've been considering taking in our twin daughters, but I didn't think you would agree, so I apologize for bringing it up. When I mentioned it, I thought I misheard my wife's cheerful response, thinking she agreed to taking in 2 more kids. To my surprise, she said it was okay and that we should bring them home. I wondered why she agreed to such a sudden request. Later, she explained her reason. My name is Hayden, and I've been married to Leela for 2 years. I am divorced, and Leela is my second wife. The reason for my divorce was because my ex-wife, Amy, had an affair. Amy loved flashy things, which were the complete opposite of me. Her extroverted and friendly personality attracted many friends, unlike my introverted nature. She seemed to like that I had a good career at a well-known company and married me for it. Amy kept trying to get my attention, and I eventually married her. Life with lively Amy was enjoyable in its own way, and I'm grateful that she gave birth to our twin daughters, Moira and Clara, who are my treasures. When Moira and Clara turned 2, Amy suddenly told me she wanted a divorce because she was pregnant with someone else's child. I was shocked by how casually she said it and didn't understand at first. I was furious and demanded to know who the other man was. It turned out to be a foolish man she often met, one of her many friends who even attended our wedding. He betrayed me and stole my wife. Disgusted by the situation, I took Moira and Clara and stayed at my parents' house. We ended up divorcing, and both Amy and I had to pay alimony, but I couldn't win custody of the girls. I knew it was difficult for a father to win custody, but since my wife was the one who broke our marriage, it was especially hard to accept. I couldn't change the decision and was only allowed to see Moira and Clara regularly in exchange for child support payments. I looked forward to the days I could see them and made sure our time together was filled with fun memories like going to theme parks and zoos, However, living together was no longer an option, and after returning the girls to Amy, I found myself crying alone on the bus ride home, realizing my heart was empty after losing my wife and daughters. I was feeling so mentally drained that I couldn't see a reason to keep going. A grown man crying on a bus must have been a strange sight, as the other passengers started to move away. Then, a woman named Leela approached me out of concern. She asked if I was okay and suggested we get off at the next stop together. Leela wasn't just being curious or showing pity, she genuinely cared. It struck me as unusual and made me wonder why she would be kind to someone like me. When I told her I was fine, she insisted that people who are fine don't cry and handed me a handkerchief. She insisted on getting off with me at the next stop. I tried to deflect her kindness, but she found a bench at the bus stop where I ended up sharing my sad story. Layla listened intently, nodding along, which made me feel like she truly cared. Lila's words gave me hope. She assured me that while I might be going through a dark period, brighter days would come. Her kindness truly saved me. Using the excuse of returning her handkerchief after washing it, I got her contact information and started meeting her often. As I got to know Leela more, I realized she was different. She cared for everyone and was kind to all. Despite her occasional clumsy mistakes, she was genuine. Eventually, I suspected there might be something more to her kindness, but she wasn't the type to have hidden motives. Her sincerity and occasional blunders, followed by asking me for advice, made me fall in love with her. I took the first step and proposed to Leela. Leela, you've brightened up my life. Will you marry me? I'll never forget the moment she smiled happily at my awkward proposal. Even after Leela and I had a son named Tom, I continued to visit Moira and Clara regularly. Leela knew about the child support payments and that I had twin daughters. I was afraid she might feel uncomfortable, so I never mentioned it. Feeling guilty, I lied and said I was going out with friends instead of telling her the truth. Despite this, Leela would always send me off with a smile, saying, "Take care." One day, I received a sudden call informing me that my ex-wife, Amy, had passed away in a car accident along with her current husband and their child. It was Amy's mother who called, sounding depressed. She explained that she couldn't take care of Moira and Clara, my twin daughters, and mentioned they might need to be placed in a facility if no one could care for them. Without hesitation, I told her I would take them in. However, after impulsively agreeing, I felt overwhelmed with guilt. I was now building a new family with Leela and our son Tom, and knew it might be impossible to manage everything. So, I decided to talk to Leela about it. I approached Leela and explained the situation. Actually, my ex-wife passed away in an accident. I've been thinking about taking in our twin daughters, but I assume you wouldn't agree. Sorry for bringing this up. To my surprise, Leela responded compassionately, "Oh, that's terrible. It's okay." I was prepared for her to suggest divorce or be upset, so I thought I misheard her. She continued, "It means we'll have 2 more kids. It's okay, bring them home. They must be feeling lost without their mom suddenly gone." Puzzled by her acceptance, I asked why she was okay with this. She rolled her eyes and laughed, saying, "Silly, you've always cared for the twins, haven't you? I knew you were meeting them regularly. I noticed how you always sneak out and come back in a good mood. I knew you wouldn't cheat on me, so it couldn't be an affair. See, I'm such a good detective, right?" In that moment, I realized just how generous and understanding Leela was. "Thank you," I said, grateful for her support and kindness. After thanking Leela, I drove to my former in-laws' house to pick up Moira and Clara. When I found them, the 5-year-old twins were sleeping cuddled together, their cheeks marked with traces of tears. My heart ached seeing them like that. I expressed my gratitude to my former mother-in-law and gently woke Moira and Clara, explaining the situation as simply as possible for children. Both of them cried upon hearing the news that they wouldn't see their mother again, but they bravely said, "We want to be with you, Daddy," accepting to live with me. As we drove back home, I told them about Leela and Tom, explaining that Leela was a kind and wonderful woman and Tom was a cute little baby. Moira and Clara seemed anxious, but they nodded quietly. When we arrived home, Leela had prepared a feast with dishes that children love. She introduced herself to Moira and Clara with a warm smile, saying, "Welcome, I'm Leela. I'll be living with you guys from now on, so let's get along. I know you two must be very sad right now, but it's okay. You have your dad, and of course, I'm here too." Leela spoke to them gently, encouraging them to eat. Moira and Clara hesitated at first, but soon began eating heartily, which relieved me. After bathing them and putting them to bed, I discovered that Leela had already bought children's bedding. She had carried it home herself since I had taken the car. Leela laughed it off, but I was truly grateful. Moira and Clara initially refused to sleep with Leela, so I ended up sleeping between them. When I apologized for their behavior, Leela reassured me, saying, "It's too sudden for them. For a while, you'll be their main support. Don't worry about me, just do your best." During the night, Moira and Clara cried in their sleep, making it a heart-wrenching night. However, living together went smoother than I had expected. Leela didn't mind when the twins looked at her suspiciously. She scolded them like a real mother when they misbehaved and comforted them gently when they cried. As we settled into our new life together, it became clear that Amy hadn't been very affectionate towards the twins. Moira and Clara tried to do everything by themselves, from getting snacks out of the fridge to putting away their clothes. Initially, I thought they were quite independent, but their behavior seemed unusual. As Leela and I discussed Amy's neglect of Moira and Clara, we realized just how little care Amy had taken of them. The clothes sent for Moira and Clara were extremely limited, and when Leela cooked for them, they asked hesitantly if Leela would give them food too. They were puzzled by simple routines like taking a daily shower, having been used to bathing only once every 2 days. It was also odd that Amy went on trips with her new family, leaving Moira and Clara behind. It became clear that the girls had been treated poorly, and I couldn't contain my anger. I can't forgive Amy or her husband. They had a duty to make Moira and Clara happy after gaining custody, yet why didn't they take care of them properly? I trembled with rage, but Amy and her husband were no longer alive for me to confront. I felt powerless, clenching my fists in frustration. Leela comforted me, saying, "Hayden, I understand your anger. Not properly caring for adorable kids like Moira and Clara is infuriating. But there's no use holding onto anger towards people who are no longer here. The best revenge on Amy and her husband is making Moira and Clara happy with us. Let's pour all our love into them and Tom, not getting caught up in anger or hatred towards those who've passed." Her calm and compassionate words moved me deeply. I blamed myself for not realizing how Moira and Clara were being treated despite meeting them regularly. Leela comforted me, saying, "It's okay, Hayden. You're doing everything you can." I dedicated myself to being a good father for Moira and Clara, and of course for Tom, fulfilling my responsibility as a parent. Over time, Moira and Clara gradually warmed up to Leela's bright and friendly demeanor. Initially wary of her, they eventually wanted to sleep next to Leela. When they argued over who got to be closer to Leela, she hugged them both and said with a smile, "No need to fight over me. I love you both, so it's okay." Leela's positive and reassuring presence was like magic. Her constant assurance was a salvation for Moira, Clara, and me. As time passed, Moira and Clara grew up and became fifth graders. On the open school day, Leela and I shared a nostalgic moment, reminiscing about our youth and sharing stories from when we were their age. I remember attending Moira and Clara's school to make a presentation about feelings towards parents and personal treasures. The students were tasked with writing essays on the theme of family, and I was a bit worried about how Leela might feel if Moira and Clara wrote only about Amy and her husband. It could potentially hurt Leela's feelings. When I expressed my concerns to Leela, she laughed them off. Even if their essays are all about Amy and her husband, it doesn't bother me at all. If that means they were happy with those two, isn't that a good thing? The challenge of having twins was deciding who would attend which class on open school day. Despite feeling a bit saddened, Both Moira and Clara insisted they wanted Leela to come. To be fair, we had them play a coin toss to decide. Moira won, which left Clara feeling downcast. I reassured Clara, "Don't you like being with Daddy? I love you very much." Clara responded, "It's not that I don't like being with you, Daddy. I love you too, but I wanted Leela to hear." I worried if Clara was starting to rebel, but her true feelings became clear after she read her essay on Open School Day. In her essay, Clara wrote about Leela, mentioning her life with Amy and her husband, which wasn't very happy. She shared feeling incredibly anxious when her mother died, but also expressed being happy to live with me and scared of living with Leela, whom she didn't know. Clara then spoke about the things Leela did for her, like taking baths together and playing with bubbles for the first time. Leela would soothe her when she cried at night until she fell asleep. The way Clara described Leela in her essay painted a picture of a loving mother figure. Clara concluded her essay by saying, "I want to call Leela Mom, but I've been too shy to say it, so I've decided to call her Mom when I get home today." As Clara finished reading, I couldn't help but cry uncontrollably. Other parents were tearing up, and even the teacher was wiping away tears. After the open school day, Leela, who was with Moira, had red eyes and a runny nose just like me. When I asked what happened, Leela shared that Moira had read a similar essay. It seemed they had planned it. After nodding to each other, Moira and Clara turned to Leela and said in unison, "Mom, we love you." Leela broke down in tears, hugging them tightly and trembling as she said, "Mom loves you both so much too." Naturally, I burst into tears again. Our family was living happily, and any thoughts of revenge against Amy and her husband had vanished without notice. All I wished for was to protect this beloved family. Being able to live such a happy life was all thanks to Leela. When I expressed my gratitude to her, she simply smiled and said, "Thanks to you too." I could never thank her enough.